again, I'm working in the New Zealand Olympic program, and I'm in the triathlon program, and there's a gal ultimately that is just in that overtraining kind of syndrome. And I remember asking if I could, get your consult to help her. And that was a really neat journey just to watch you with your practice. And this led to another paper that we did called Athletes Fit But Unhealthy. Because ultimately this individual was in, and you were at this point sort of experienced with this problem, but this individual was in this, you can call it a state of overtraining. It's the overtraining syndrome. That's I guess that's the title that we're sort of putting on this thing. But ultimately, and like you said, everyone's an individual, but this individual was obviously too sympathetically stressed and probably doing following standard nutritional guidelines, and which had a large emphasis on consuming carbohydrates without really good direction as to where those carbohydrates come from. And of course, I'm fast forwarding into what you've sort of figured out. We have to, that sugar content can be a real killer, can it, for our athletes?
It can be. I mean, essentially the problem is junk food. We are recommending, we are giving kids, we are highlighting junk food as, the almighty energy source in sports, and de-emphasizing, not just de-emphasizing fat, but putting it down. And of course, everybody knows, fat is not good. And so, the social no fat, low fat trends have certainly long ago infiltrated sports.
There's going to be a listener out there that's saying, well, what's the big deal? It's like I'm working so hard as an athlete, and, calories in, calories out. I can eat whatever the heck I want to, like what's the big deal with junk food? What's wrong with the problem here, Phil?
Well, the answer to what's wrong with junk food is that it's lacking in nutrients. It's replacing, and the idea that they add nutrients is a real misrepresentation of, well, it's just not reality, because they're adding synthetic vitamins, which act differently than natural forms. But the junk food is also replacing what could be very healthy food, which will give us a lot more nutrients than we can get from, a bunch of synthetic vitamins that are added to our processed foods. The big thing is the sugar, which we have to include refined carbohydrate, because it turns to sugar, turns to glucose so quickly following consumption. And then we have to say, well, what's wrong with that? The problem is that as a population, humans are becoming more and more insulin resistant. And the parallel to that is the overfat pandemic that you and I wrote a lot about, that has progressed along with insulin resistance, and which is now occurring in kids. So way back when I first began working with athletes, the younger athletes were much less insulin resistant, or I didn't even think that they were insulin resistant. And gradually they started showing more body fat, especially in the abdomen. And when I would see new athletes who were in their 40s and above, they were putting in all these miles running and biking and doing whatever, and they still had excess body fat. And it became the realization that and it was really part of what we spoke about earlier, that these athletes were trying to get more fit and they were neglecting their health. And so they were storing body fat And that correlated with physical injuries. It correlated with mental injuries, reductions in energy and bonking in a race and plateauing and all that kind of stuff.